This episode is brought to you by Midwest Night Watchers, found everywhere on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Piercing the Veil.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Hope you guys all had a great week.
Yeah, it's warming up here.
Seems like we were just on. Weren't we just on?
Well, last night for movies.
Yeah, 2 nights in a row for scary movies on our Rumble channel. We've been doing old creepy movies, and some of the buildings, if you look in the stuff behind all these movies, there's a lot of maybe old world stuff. So
I keep seeing that. All the black and white movies you've been showing, I'm going, ooh, look at that fireplace. Oh, look at the old world buildings. Yep. Wow.
Then we're also on Wednesday nights, late when the Night Owl Lounge on Rumble and YouTube, which we're live tonight on YouTube and Rumble. So if you have Rumble, check us out over there. But Wednesday nights is a Night Owl Lounge where we come on about 10 p.m. Central and we hang out for 3 or 4 hours, just chatting with everybody in chat and getting to know everyone. And whatever subject we bring up lately, it's been old world maps and creatures and monsters and weird things on maps. So that's been fun. So
this chat's flying already.
We do a cryptid report and also a UFO report. And if we can find one for that day or that month, then that's what we usually bring up, or anything new that we see in the news, we bring that up also. So it's a lot of fun on Wednesday nights, the Night Owl Lounge. Join us if you can. But tonight we got Bigfoot, Dwarf and Latchkey Hustle. We're going to be talking about Tartarian and Old World. And we got some articles and some pictures. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Stick around and let us know if you have a comment or something pertaining to Old World or Tartaria. Put it in all capitals so we can see it.
This chat's flying. I'm not sure if I can catch everybody.
I know.
Should we try? All right. We've got Dragonfly. We got Gone Girl and Gus. I think Gus must be with her. We've got Clay. Moon at Noon. We have UK in the house. Hi, Elaine. Roger. Dwarfy's in the house. Gary. Let's see. Who am I missing? Tennessee, Kentucky, Bigfoot. Hi, Jim. Hopefully Matt's there too. Hi, Matt. Demaria. We've got Hillbilly Herb.
All right.
Hillbilly Herb.
Yeah.
Oh, who am I missing? I think Heidi Pop was in here earlier.
Moon at
somewhere.
Noon. Say Moon at Noon.
Moon at Noon.
Tammy.
Oh, Ghislaine. Tammy. There was Eloise. T-Bone. I thought there was more people back here.
Still waiting for your email, T-Bone. I'm not sure if you ordered or having problems. Get a hold of us at midwestnightwatchers@gmail.com and let us know what's going on with your order. If you want to order, or because we have a merch shop and we have a lot of great, cool designs, all our logos and some UFO stuff. We're getting ready to add Space Penguins logo. So look forward to that.
Everybody's favorite, Space Penguins.
Yeah. little mushroom UFOs and space penguin aliens. That's cool, huh? That's exactly the logo we're adding to a t-shirt.
Space penguins. Hi, Daryl. Welcome in. All right. Well,
all right. I think we said hi to everybody. Welcome in. If we missed your name, we're sorry. We're trying to keep up with chat, but like I said, put everything in all caps. If you have something pertinent or that pertains to our topic tonight, and we'll try to address your question or comment. Other than that, we're gonna get going and bring Latchkey and a Bigfoot Dwarf up, and let's get this show going, huh?
Yes. Whoop whoop. There's Dwarfy.
Here we are, guys.
Welcome back, guys. It was like a month ago when we were on, kind of digging into some of the strange stuff in the skies.
Time flies.
Yeah, I think it's been about a month, maybe 5 weeks ago.
I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah, but welcome back.
It feels like it. Thank you. It feels like a little longer, but yeah, I'm glad to be back. What's up, Latchkey?
How you doing, my man?
All right, brother.
Good to see you.
So tonight we're going to be talking about Old World and Tartaria a little bit, and get into some pictures and some articles. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I mean, I have absolutely no idea or no answers to what happened way back before we were even here. But there's a lot of history and history books and old photographs and stuff that just makes you wonder. It's like, okay, how is all this connected? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Dwarf.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. You know, I've always been interested in history, and it's funny how that sounds. You know, his story. And I've heard people break that down before, so it makes you wonder what's her story. But yeah, there's been several different civilizations that I've been into. We got into the Olmecs last time with Geralt, and that was interesting there.
Mm-hmm.
Different timelines, civilizations I've always been into, but now my brother, he puts me on to a lot of stuff, and he's actually back. We're at the shop here. He put me onto this whole subject of the old world and Tartaria, and I was just like, at first it took me a little bit to kind of get things going, and once things started going, I was like, oh wow, yeah. Excuse me, it really had me questioning a lot of things, and that's what we do here. Again, I like you said, Geralt, I don't know, we're just questioning. I don't know, should we have some sort of disclaimer here or something?
For entertainment purposes only.
There you go.
No, I mean, we don't know. We didn't. I mean, I have what people say, oral history from my dad, from his grandfather and his grandfather, and what their lives were like. But if you go past that, you just have to go by what you read and what you've heard from your family or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And what you if you see a picture that looks, hey, that's kind of old world, or that looks, how did they build that at that time when we had horses and wagons and buggies? I mean, you just kind of question it. You're not saying that it didn't happen the way they tell us, but how do we know?
Well, there's a saying going around this community: once you see it, you can't unsee it. You just start noticing all of it. Once you start realizing, you can't unsee it anymore. You just start seeing all this strangeness.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
That's a great point, because this whole concept is sort of new to me, but like Dwarf, I'm kind of an LA dude, and I lived in Hollywood growing up, and I've been in the LA basin my whole life, basically, and I've been around stuff, and it's like taking me decades to question things that I've been seeing forever. And like near my house, the Colorado Street Bridge is a perfect example, because it's by the Rose Bowl, and there's this natural arroyo, and there's this gorgeous bridge that crosses one side to the other, and it's ornate. It's just, it looks like it's out of a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look into it, it was built in like 1911 or 1912. It apparently only took a year to build. And I mean, you just look at it, and this is an earthquake zone. I mean, there's no real explanation for it that really sits well with me. But you know, for decades I drove on it or past it and never once questioned it. It's
Right.
Right.
it's a strange thing. Like these things are like lying in front of you in plain sight, and then something has to kind of like switch in your mind, and then all of a sudden you can't not see these things, like Jane was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you know, in the 1800s, we had this boom of everybody building these great big mansions, you know, the Rockefellers, all these people building not only their personal houses that look like, how did they do that? But then you have the state capitals and the US buildings, and every town has some kind of a courthouse that looks just unbelievable as far as the stonework and the masonry. And it's like, how did we do this? How did we haul all this material with horse and wagons everywhere across the nation in the 1800s? I mean, you look at all the buildings, whether it's Chicago, New York, California, all these places at the same time, everybody's doing all these great big granite and magnificent buildings. Where'd all the material come from? How do we get it everywhere with horses and wagons?
I was just going to say it wasn't just the brick and the cement. You're looking at granite and marble, and granite is extremely heavy, and so is marble. Our first truck was 1904, and like what John was saying, 1911. Oh, a lot of these buildings came up during the Great Depression. Where they come up with all this money? And you know, they were making it sound like they were having such a hard time during the Great Depression. But like you said, they built that in a year. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing. I want to rewind back. So, John, you're saying the Colorado Bridge, the bridge that John's mentioning. I believe that's the suicide bridge that they call as well, right?
Ooh.
Yep. Yeah. So that's for the paranormal heads. It's one of those hot spots. Pasadena's got a real haunted vibe to it. I've mentioned it a whole lot. I've been really attracted to Pasadena, Altadena area, and yeah, that bridge. I've done several live streams just because I knew it was one of those paranormal spots in the Pasadena area. And so you could check out some of those vids. Are buried somewhere on the channel. But yeah, we'll be going there again soon. And I'm glad John looked at it with those eyes, because also from the bridge, there's this facility right behind it. And I think it used to be a hospital. It might still be a hospital of some sort, but it's a trippy structure. It looks kind of Art Deco-y, and it's got a interesting maybe copper top. You know what building I'm talking about, John? I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's on a hill there too. And it's interesting because under the bridge, so that you got the bridge on top in the city up there, but then you got the under part of the bridge there, and also that facility that's sitting on a hill. And it makes me think, what's under that building there and under that hill? But anyway, yeah, the Pasadena area got brought up to me because of a particular channel that goes in on this, my lunch break. Did a thing on Pasadena and touched on a lot of places out there. And so, yeah, John's in a spot where a lot of these buildings are. So it's super cool that, yeah, he's touching on these areas.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up it. Anyone in chat don't know the channel My Lunch Break? Go check it out. Subscribe. Talk about seeking truth. That is one of the best channels out there.
There's just so many. Everybody's talking about Tartarian Old World now. There's just so much information just flooding TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, it's out there.
Thank you, Gone Girl.
So I have some text and some old history, and a couple of these I think, or one of them at least, is yours, John. And we'll start with this one. I'll bring it up on the screen so everybody can see it. But it's so amazing when you go back in history and look, if you can find some old history books, and you got to really look. And sometimes there's actual mentions of Tartaria. And that's what we're kind of focusing on tonight, but we're going to get into some old world stuff if you want to go and look at beyond that. So this is an old history book from 1689 that they found in London. It talks about the voyage into Tartaria. And if you look at the picture, you can see how big they're depicting this lady that I'm assuming is a Tartarian. And we find that a lot in history books and stuff of that. Supposedly the Tartarians were a big race of people from
Yeah.
8 to 12 feet, just like we talk about Sasquatch and giants being so big. So what do you guys think about that?
And it's interesting that in that photo in particular, that she is standing in an archway, because that's one of the specific recurrent themes that you tend to see in these old world structures. There's these very tall archways, these gigantic doorways.
Yes.
So, I mean, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's
1600.
yeah, I think that's amazing.
I mean,
That's really cool.
1689, and then they're depicting them. So I don't know if they knew of Tartarians or the Tartarians were still around in 1689. I mean, I don't know when they disappeared or kind of went out of I guess style. I don't know if style or existence. But I mean, look how tall they have her depicted as I mean, I'm assuming that's the second story where those other people are at, and her head and shoulders are above them.
Yeah, and if it were one photo from one book, then you could easily sort of write it off and chalk it up to whatever. Like, oh, but it's so consistent. It's consistent across the board. And so you can't like retain a degree of intellectual integrity and at the same time dismiss the size because it seems fantastical, but because it's also very consistent.
What do you think? What do you think, Dwarf?
Yeah, no, interesting. One of the first things also was the archway that John pointed out, and then also looks like some like light rays coming through there. There's some sort of hole of some sort. That's looking interesting there. And actually, someone pointed out, I shared some pictures from another place in Pasadena that got my interest. It's called Green Castle. You probably know of Green Castle, John.
Yep.
And right across the street from there is a park that's got my interest too, because I wonder about parks and areas that have been like cleared out. Maybe there was more of these structures there. But Green Castle, I shared some pictures of it recently, and someone was commenting. This lady commented that there's these archways on a certain part of the building, and she's like, "Oh wow, look how amazing! Those look like magnets."
Oh,
and I was like, oh yeah, that made me that sparked something in me. So yeah, magnets come to mind. I don't know.
There's other videos I've been seeing here lately. Yes, magnets has been a part of some of this.
If you look, and this is sort of, I'm stretching back in my educational history to an art history class I took decades ago, but like metaphorically, I mean, that picture with that light coming in literally focuses on somebody, and a lot of art historians would say this is a way of saying that this is an enlightened being. Like, it's literally a spotlight on a being. That being is enlightened. And this type of artwork is not accidental in my perspective, and that's how I would interpret that.
We're used to seeing it in religious photos and paintings, where they have the ray, protect, the Holy Spirit or God coming down on like either Moses or Jesus or, whoever the depiction is. But these are just regular history books and books talking about subjects, and they have the same thing where you have the rays coming down on somebody. So it's like, what are they trying to tell us? I mean, just like he said, is it somebody that's spiritual, or is it somebody that has a connection to another entity or being outside our world, or a god, or, it just baffles me. It's hard to wrap your head around it sometimes.
Well, one thing I noticed with some of these old world buildings with the giant doors, they're taller than a normal sized giant. I think there are some beings, maybe the Tartarian, ever even taller than the normal giants, like Goliath.
Yeah.
There's some big, or the archangels. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just seemed like they're some kind of giant being that needed these humongous large doors.
We got pictures of that, so we'll get to that in a little bit. So we'll bring up the next article, which relates to all this that we're talking about. So here's Here's another article, and it's from Anna Bishop, and it's talking about all the musical events and stuff going on, and talking about a book. And it says that they're doing this play or this thing in appropriate costumes and sing the, so it's like a Broadway play or a musical, and they sing it in 6 different languages. And you see it says Russian, German, English, French, and Tartarian.
Oh, wow.
So obviously Tartaria had its own language that was different than all these other people. So I don't know if anybody knows. I mean, other than that person obviously could sing it or was written down somewhere, but I've never heard anybody bring up a book or anything written in Tartaria or Tartarian. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Wow.
Negative.
I haven't, but what I think about when I see that kind of goes back to the heart of this, which is like the true story not being told, because we can all name dead languages that were way older than Tartaria.
Right?
Why can't this is probably the most recent dead language I'm aware of, and yet it's not taught. You know, like
Exactly.
people were speaking and singing and communicating in this language, you know, a couple centuries ago. Yet we talk about Latin and these other, you know, dead languages, and this is just completely omitted from the record of our history.
Right. We are actually lucky that some of these old maps, these old books are surfacing from somebody's basement or room, because all the book burning in the late 1800s, they were trying to destroy anything and everything. They were destroying all evidence. We're so lucky we have come across some of these old books and maps that they didn't find. And then it makes us all question, and we're all waking up now like, what? This wasn't in our history books or our school, you know, like you said.
And if there were no internet and no, you know, platform and technology to dialogue like this and information share, there'd be no chance at, you know, getting the truth out, or even getting out the fact that there are still good questions to be asked. People would just be all in the dark.
Right. What do you think, Dwarf? Know any Tartarian?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard. Yeah, no, I haven't ran into anyone speaking it. I don't think I've heard it, but I would love to check it out and try to learn some. Yeah, so far the only language I see that maybe Tartarian is some of these buildings and stuff. But yeah, no, it's amazing how information comes about, and I think, you know, everything's here for us to learn what we need to learn. And also, I've heard, and I do believe that, you know, some people believe who you want, maybe, you know, the book burners or whoever it may be covering up this information and stuff like that, that they always leave some nuggets out there for us as well. So you know, it's up for us to figure that out. But yeah, no, I'm on the hunt and love, you know, opening up the cipher like this and getting the brain going. And yeah, what you got next, Gerald?
Well, we go right into a PDF that John sent. I believe this is the one, and I'll let John say if this is. I think this is from the Russian document you were talking about.
Yeah, and you know, the crazy part to me about this is that this was a declassified document on the CIA website.
Oh.
So, you know, I mean, I almost don't know what to make of it, but like, why is Tartarian history and the Russians' desire to rewrite it, you know, a focal point in the American government? I mean, it just leads to so many questions. But you know, it seems as if a lot of people rely on old world maps and sort of like kind of attenuated references to Tartaria, enough so that other people can dismiss it and say, oh, I don't know about that. This is very difficult to dismiss, in my view.
Right.
I mean, and it's you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's there.
Right. And we all know how the KGB, and we all talk about they're always tracking everybody and getting any information they can. So it's weird that this comes from that kind of information or that kind of agency. So I'll just read this little bit that you were talking about. It says, issued a directive ordering the party's Tartar Provincial Committee, so they had a committee for Tartar, to proceed a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of nationalistic characteristic committed by individual writers and historians in dealing with Tartar history.
Hmm.
In other words, Tartar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate references to Great Russian aggressions and to hide the fact of the real course of Tartar-Russian relations. So the Russians knew of the Tartars just as well as the Chinese knew of the Tartars. Then here they're changing history or trying to I guess, make Russia look good or to get rid of the information about the Tartars they didn't want people to know. That's how I read it.
Because that area was Tartaria, and then Russia pretty much came in and cleaned them all out. And that's a part of their flag is getting rid of Tartaria. So why remove it? Why not let us know that there was another country there and now it's Russia? Why hide it from us?
It's a very strange thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, very interesting find there.
Yeah.
Latchkey.
That's a
Super cool and
great
interesting.
find.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then I've heard from certain sources. You know, I tap into different sources, and some of them have their views on all this and stuff. But and there's some that think that even some of the information coming out on Tartaria that we're getting could be a form of like a propaganda, maybe coming from out that way too. So just a little heads up, you know. I don't know, but yeah, you know. So you got to keep that in mind as well. But yeah, no, that's fascinating. I want to read the whole thing. I'll be checking that out later.
Well, just like we were saying that I've been in this like maybe 4 years now. We've been calling it Tartaria. Well, now here lately, we're all saying it's not Tartaria. That was only over in that part of the world. So we're calling it Old World. There's something different and more than just Tartaria. So the whole world situation with these buildings and cathedrals and stuff is not, to me, Tartaria anymore. It's Old World. And Tartaria was a separate situation that got wiped out, and we don't understand why and what happened to them.
You know, my in-laws are German and Hungarian, and so periodically when we're visiting them, I would look at books, and my mother-in-law keeps and has a lot of Hungarian history books and art books. And it's, you know, early on, it was sort of a way I am a history buff and I like ancient history and all of these things. And so it was actually a good way that I was able to connect with my mother-in-law early on when it was important to sort of build a good foundation of a relationship with her. And so I started reading and educating myself about Vlad Tepes and the entire like history of it. And it was so eye-opening to look at the buildings, the churches, the castles, look at the structures that were built in existence in like the 1400s and the 1300s, and say to myself, like, how with no power tools, no, you know, like, how is this happening? And I mean, it's literally like looking back into a different world.
Right. I mean, I just, and I know this is probably not gonna interest everybody, but I watched a TikTok the other day of a guy that went into AI or GTP chat and asked about just like Yankee Stadium, something currently that was built in our lifetime or, you know, our modern history. And it said, you know, the guy asked GPT chat, it goes, how in I think it's 17 or 14, that this stadium was built so magnificently when there was hardly any, no automobiles, or hardly is this getting started. How is this built if if they used horses and wagons? And it was like unbelievable amount of materials they used. It was like 750,000 tons of materials that they used to make that stadium, and the grounds and everything in it, and all the sub levels that are there. And they said they built that in 14 to 18 months. And so that guy asked him, okay, if this material was all 10 miles away, just 10 miles from the stadium, how long would it take to get that to the stadium? And how long, or how many horses and wagons would you need? And they came up with like 200 to 500 horses and wagons to get the material there. But the strange thing is, they said, how long would it take to build this, even today? And it came up with like 200 and some years.
Yep.
It would take 200 and some years for horses and wagons just 10 miles away to get the material and bring it back, and then for them to build it.
Yep. I love those ones where they mention, 1 year, 2 year, really
Right.
quick builds. There's actually right down Olympic Boulevard here in Boyle Heights. There's a building, and it's an Art Deco building. It's an old Sears used to have. They used to have their stuff there, and there's still the Sears signs on it. And when you look into that, something was telling me, and it's actually connected right to the LA River, which I find interesting. They built that in 6 months, they said, and that was 1927. And 1927 seems to be a something about that date. A lot of things were going up at that time, so keep an eye out for that 1927 date.
Well, the 1776, 1812, and 1880, early 1900s. Yeah, all these dates, there's something to it also.
It's just amazing to me. I mean, we have all these fine structures and all these ornate decorations and carvings and stuff. And it's just like, I'm not saying nobody's that skilled that couldn't do that, but in the time period and when they said they did it, I don't know.
Well, I still am questioning all of our cowboy and Indian movies and shows that they were programming us back then. There were saloons and casinos all over the place, and we're not seeing this in the old world buildings. They're not showing us these massive cathedrals and buildings, in these movies. They're showing us wooden shacks and stuff. And they were telling us that the whole town went to one church, which was the school. Why are these cathedrals around all over the place? If, what's true? We were supposed to believe the cowboy and Indian days, and they had these massive, gorgeous buildings.
On that point of programming, so I'll try to make this succinct. Stick with me on this. So my daughter just finished up her high school performance of or production of Cinderella. And so it got me thinking. And so I started looking at the different Disney stories. And if you look at Snow White, Cinderella, Tangled, Aladdin, Brave, you just go through. You invariably find wooden structures on the outskirts that are sort of dilapidated, and it's like the poor people. And then you see this epic magical castle where the leaders live. And I kind of wonder, it started making me think, like, this indoctrination into this just blind acceptance early on, because it's just children primarily watching these Disney shows and Disney movies, and it's like, it just puts into your mind, it's just, you should accept that these gigantic castles are just there and don't question it. It's just, this is where they live. We're not going to explain how they were built, who built them, when they were built. Just accept that that's where they live. And then the modern houses are these like sheds you know, and
Mhm.
it's but it's so consistent. It's across the board in every one of those movies or in like shows, even like Bridgerton, which is it's not for children, but it's like this notion of like they're in horses and carriages, and yet you've got these castles that are just preposterously large and
Right.
would have taken how long to make, but it's like you just accept it. It's just like,
Right.
okay, that's there.
And palaces, mansions, the insane asylums were all giant castles. The orphan buildings were gorgeous buildings. Why would you build something like that if it's just going to be prisons and insane asylums and orphans? It's almost proof that they found these buildings and just took them over.
Well,
Every single capital, White House, libraries, hospitals, universities. Just look, go down the rabbit hole. It's the same people that pretty much claimed all these giant buildings and the cathedrals. But we're supposed to be told that we had muddy streets, that the wagons got stuck on a rainy day, even just with people in them. Okay, well, what about material that's heavy? Where's the factories that made the bricks?
so since you said that they found this stuff,
Yeah,
let's
bounded.
check out this from a 1910 history book that I found.
1910.
So this says, and it's talking about the indigenous people as far as Native Americans, the Aboriginals, denizens of the country. It says the mounds, ruined cities, pottery, and other remains since found in all parts of the land concerning which the Indians could furnish no information, and when showed a state of civilization far in advance of theirs, were proof that a great people had existed here in the remote past, who had flourished and disappeared without leaving any trace whereby they could be accounted for or identified. And this is coming from people that interviewed early in history, the 1800s and the early 1900s. They actually asked the leaders, the oldest people in these Indian tribes, Native Americans, tell us about your history. Tell us about what was going on. And they could not tell you about the people that were here before them. And they came and found buildings and structures and tools that they just repurposed for their own. So I'm not saying it's Tartarian, but I'm saying, okay, here's another evidence that there was people here and they don't know who they were or what happened to them.
And we were told this land was desolate and they were all living in teepees. Well, if they had mansions and stuff to live in, I guarantee they were taking over these buildings until we came over and kicked them out.
And it says without leaving any trace, right? But NAGPRA makes sure that we cannot find any trace, because basically, like, the mound builder culture is where you would find evidence.
Yeah.
But NAGPRA doesn't allow us, even though the Native Americans, by and large, say these were here when we got here. We didn't build these. These are not ours. But the federal government still hides behind NAGPRA, and so the archaeological community is unable to excavate or do any real, even with LIDAR, to see what's in there. And then that traces back to Abraham Lincoln's quote about that ancient race of giants whose bodies fill the mounds of America.
Right.
Right. We're told that they're Indian mounds. Are they? Or are they giants?
If you ask the Native Americans, they say they're not ours.
Right.
So
but they're saying, oh, they're sacred Indian burial grounds. Well, what else is buried underneath these mounds all over the whole United States? A lot of evidence.
Yeah, and going back, there's a. This is recent. Like even last night, I just heard this again on another channel about they were touching on the Native Americans, because the question is also where are the natives in these pictures? Where are the melanated people in these pictures? And I have seen maybe one or two with maybe them in it, but yeah, where are they in all these other pictures and depictions? Also, what was it? There was something on. I was gonna go somewhere with this.
I think you're talking about John Levi's
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah. So
video
he was
last
touching
night was doing
yep,
the Indians. Mm-hmm.
right. He was
I love
touching
you,
thank you,
whatever.
Chi.
Mm-hmm.
He was touching on the native thing, and it's interesting because we were just questioning about that recently. And so according to Native American history, he touched on the Hopi. You know, they talked about a cataclysm, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that came and they had to go underground with the ant people, you know, and some people out there have, you know, theorized that the ant people could be maybe it's alien gray. Some people have gone there, others have gone, you know, another route, but it was a small race of people that they went underground with and
Mm-hmm.
then later resurfaced at some point. But yeah, there's several other Native American tribes that have that in their history. So
Right.
thought I found that interesting.
Well, you know, and we brought this up before, me and Jane, on other shows, and it's like you always see on buildings, or when they talk about like founded, not built, not raised, not, you know, not constructed. It says founded.
And almost every single one, there was a fire within a couple years, and they had to redo it. And this is what we did. Going wrong. Or some of them actually did burn down in fires. I mean, they've been trying to destroy these buildings for the last couple hundred years with war and fires and
I think
flaming
fire
old
is
world
just a
buildings
way
and
of
just tearing them
erasing
down.
history or information. And I mean, a lot of Capitol buildings, a lot of buildings that have maybe technology, maybe free energy, maybe whatever, paintings that show stuff. I think they have these
Mhm.
fires, or maybe they're pretend, or I don't know, but they seem like they close those areas down, and when they reopen them, all that stuff is gone. The old paintings, the old
Mhm.
architect, it's all gone.
And they all rebuilt them in a year also.
I
After
mean,
the
could they have had a
And
fire?
you know,
Maybe.
if they can't burn it down or knock it down, then they wall it off or say you're not allowed here, right? And so, like, whether it's the mounds and our inability to investigate them, or there are large swaths of the Grand Canyon that have been deemed federal and private property, and you're not allowed there.
Mhm.
And you know, obviously, I'm thinking about G.E. Kincaid and the story in the newspaper in Arizona, but I mean, you know, it's like if it's too big to knock down, then we're just going to say you're not allowed over there.
Right.
And you know, for a long time, that's what was going on in Egypt too. When Zahi Hawass was in charge of the antiquities department, and it was like, we're just not. We need to retain our narrative, and what that means is you're not allowed to come over here and do science. So you know, it's a very recurrent theme when you think about it, whether it's destruction, whether it's fake fire, whatever the case is, or just putting a wall up or a fence up and saying, sorry, public, you're not allowed. It's government territory. You know, you can be
Right.
prosecuted if you trespass.
I just heard
What-
that on a video the other night that there is reservations down there for the Indians. It's their land, but they're not allowed on it. And they go, what? I thought you said it was our land. Well, yes, we gave you this land, but you're not allowed on it.
Right. Let's
Yeah.
go back to Egypt for a minute. That's very interesting,
Yeah.
because early in Egypt, like the 1800s, it was very prominent of UK European people to come over, take their mummies and sarcophaguses and bring it back to Europe and have them in their parlors and have big parties and society gatherings where they come and look at the mummies and look at the artifacts that they brought over from Egypt. And Egypt didn't care. Egypt freely gave them away, or a lot of people sold them to them so they could do that. And then when it came about finding the tombs, and you know, whether it's the king cemetery or the pyramids, it's like they had the hieroglyphs, and their own people, the own Egyptians did not know what these things said. So that was a lost language to them. Even they didn't even know their own history.
Mm-hmm.
Then they freely gave up their history to people to take it away. And then now all of a sudden, you know, now they're starting to get a grasp of it. Like, hey, we want all this stuff back. You know, we need our history back.
And the irony is that there's a real question as to whether that's even their history.
Right.
Right. There's
And it-
there's a conspiracy. The United States was Egypt and possibly Israel. Mississippi River was denials. Yeah, there's I don't know, all the artifacts in the
but
Grand Canyon of Egypt.
so much of what's in Egypt that is mind blowing is appears to be pre-dynastic, right? And so,
Mhm.
like the work with Robert Schoch and Graham Hancock and those, you know, it seems like there's credible evidence to suggest that Ramses and these other dynastic Egyptians found things too and just put their names on it. Not unlike a lot of what's gone on here with us finding buildings and then claiming they're ours.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is one of
Yeah.
the photos that you sent to me, John. I guess since we're talking about Egypt, we might as well show them and talk about them.
You can't
I
forget
mean,
Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly.
there's so many aspects of our society, geographically and otherwise, that are reflective of that culture. And I've not to say there is not a valid explanation, but I can say I've never come across one. I haven't heard an explanation as to why that is, like with our money, you know, and the dollar bill and the pyramid and all of these connections. I've never heard a clear cut, reasonable answer for why that is. I don't know.
So some of the
Yeah.
earliest history I know
Mhm.
of Egypt obviously is biblical, but also you have in the history books when Napoleon went to Egypt, you know, to conquer, and there's some language in some of the history books about Napoleon finding the Sphinx, and it was still, you know, it was covered up then, up I believe up to its neck, just kind of like this what this picture's showing.
Right.
So it
You
is
know,
a lot of history in Egypt. Like I said, their own people don't even know what it is. They're finding out just like we are about some of our history, but they had no clue on where these things came from or who built them. And I think they're trying to create a narrative that it was their early history, but like you said, who knows if it was or not.
I just saw a video the other night. Dwarf might help me with it. That they were talking about the Grand Canyon, and some of those things in the Grand Canyon looked like it could have been a Sphinx.
Oh yeah, and also like evidence of possible like mining and stuff. I don't know if you've seen that, but yeah, it makes you wonder. And I also want to touch on the fire theme. Also, again, yeah, it seems like it's yeah. Question: there's certain buildings seem like yeah they were burnt, and then there's others that weren't, but said that they were burnt multiple times. And there's some that theorize that the fire narrative is almost like a nod to a certain group, and there's also yeah certain orders, certain groups, certain societies, secret societies that I think are behind a lot of this stuff too. As we
Mhm.
get into more of the Egypt stuff, and like what John was saying, like what he was just asking, I think a lot of it points to these orders. And some of you know of these particular groups, and yeah, so I wonder, yeah, do they have more information on all this?
Yeah, it's just so interesting. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes. The more you find, the more you like, oh man, I did not know that, or how do I decipher this, or how do I wrap my head around all this information, whether it's the Grand Canyon and old world buildings, and there's just so much out there. The more you look, the more you find, and the more confusing it gets sometimes.
Well, it's just like old maps. I don't think somebody just had fun doing a painting. There's more to a lot of these old maps also.
and
Yeah.
like the Orontius Phineas map is interesting, but to me, people can argue whether or not it depicts the coast of Antarctica. What's most interesting to me about the Orontius Phineas map is that it's noted to be a source map of prior maps. And so it makes you have to ask where was the information derived for the prior maps? Like, how did they get this information that Orontius Phineas then used to create his? And it makes me think of the Vatican and the 53 miles of bookshelves of evidence that they have that no
Yeah.
one else is allowed to like legitimately investigate. And it's,
Yep.
I mean, it just feels, I tend not to be conspiratorial, but it feels like a cover up when you find out that there's that much information absolutely being withheld from the public.
Right.
And the Smithsonian's, yeah, not just the Vatican of the 50 miles or more of all of the old books and stuff that didn't get burnt. The Smithsonian, and just look at the movie The National Treasure. Well, that secret society probably did come over here and gather up every single bit of artifact that they could find. They were trying to hide evidence that there was something over here before.
Yeah,
A lot of evidence out there if you can just get your hands on it, or somebody else happens to just to leak it out, whether it's like John's Russia PDF that he was able to come across.
Yeah.
And old history books. I mean, I love finding articles on old history books, and I have another one. Speaking of Tartaria, and
Oh my.
so this is about sailing and trades in 1800s and earlier. And if you can see, some of the letters are Old English because there's Asia with the F-looking S. So keep that in mind. Some of this is Old English. And it says it talks about it contains most of the Tsar's aesthetic dominions inhabited by Tartars of several denominations. So now it's talking about different Tartars. So there's different, not just one race or one type of people, but says several denominations. And I don't know if it's talking about religious or actual people themselves. That I haven't figured out yet. Still questioning that line. But then if you go down further, it talks about China and trades. And then right down here, it says they also he adds that the Tartars who conquered China in 1644. So that's another narrative that we're going to get into a little bit about who built the China Wall and which way was it facing. Because he says the Tartars who conquered China in 1644 came from the countries bordering the rivers. So that's kind of strange and I've heard that I have another book article that talks about that there's actually Tartar itself, and then there was Tartar China. So I'm assuming that's after they conquered them, that they took over and started putting in the history books and narratives that this was actually their country now. They're part of the world. So have you guys heard any of the narrative about the Chinese Great Wall is facing the wrong way, that the places that they would shoot from or the guard posts are actually looking in on China and not outside of China?
I've heard that in videos.
Just recently.
In.
Yeah, just recently. So, but yeah, when I heard the Great Wall, I was like, oh yeah, another one. Anytime I hear like certain things, there's what the in Paris, the tower,
Eiffel Tower.
Eiffel Tower.
There we go. Yeah, the Eiffel Tower. I actually got it right here. Yeah, that comes to mind. I never thought, and I was like, oh yeah, that, that comes to question too, and just certain things. It's like, oh yeah, and then China Wall was definitely one of them, and yeah, it's interesting that the way it's facing. I could see that.
And man built that without cranes and equipment.
Well, those are little bricks, so I'm assuming, or kind of little bricks. I don't know. I don't know what it's all made of, but that picture there, I think somebody could have built that wall, that part of the wall, the top part. But as far as laying the foundation, how big those are and those buildings, I don't know.
And how many miles is this?
Oh my gosh,
that's what I'm talking about. I mean, it's miles and miles.
But I find it interesting if you find the right pictures, that it looks like that it is facing inwards towards China instead of all the holes in the places where the guards would be able to fend off attackers are on the wrong side of the walls most of the time. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I've never been to the Wall of China, so I couldn't tell you right offhand. So I don't know if this picture's been flipped or. But supposedly the green right here on this side,
Jessica
China's side, and that's where all these holes for archers and stuff to be able to shoot from.
There, Jessica's. Oops, wrong one. I got freaky instead. Oops.
If
This is
that's
so sensitive.
what that's even for, you know, those if they're saying that's what that's for, who knows? It could be something else, you know. But yeah, also the Wall of China, I remember in school learning that they would bury the people that would pass away that were building it into the walls and stuff too.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's pretty trippy.
Oh, that gets in the catacombs. Where do all these millions and millions of bodies come from for these catacombs that are all over the place?
Yeah, and I thought of that when the Vatican was mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. And there's design on those walls of skulls, and it's just that's creepy.
Dwarf has a picture from a month or so ago that I think his brother took when they were in downtown, and there's somebody coming out of the ground. You want to kind of tell them about that picture a little bit?
Yeah. So we were actually that was the day of when the fire situation started. Yeah. So we were downtown, and we noticed some guys like going into like the ground, like they opened up it wasn't an actual manhole, but it was some sort of hole, and these guys were doing something down there. They didn't look like city workers or anything. There was something, you know, it got my attention, and I happened to just take a picture, and yeah, it's just, you know, what's going on under there.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And then,
so just go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Help me with this, John. You gotta remind me of something.
Right. No. So there's these two guys, right, and they're clearly not like city workers or anything. They're doing something that probably they wouldn't want to be seen, whatever they're doing. And it was like it's a very like timely photograph because it's a reminder like that there's an underworld going on underneath our feet, and it's not just relegated to LA, you know.
Right.
Like obviously there's subway systems, there's all kinds of weird stuff, and there's an ecosystem, there's a whole world going on beneath our feet.
Right.
And that I love that photo because it's just a reminder, because it's like out of sight, out of mind. You know, you don't. It's not really mapped out. It's not publicized, and it's a great photo because these dudes. I mean, I don't know what they're doing, but yeah. And it's just like I even showed my wife. I was like, "Look at this!" And I told her, I'm like, "There's stuff going on under our feet. We're not supposed to know about it. No one wants to talk about it." But yeah, and it reminded me of Demolition Man, because in that movie, if you remember, I think that's the movie Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone, where they bring him out of cryostasis, right? But like the have-nots lived literally under the ground, and like their whole civilization was under there. And so that picture you got, man, that's a great photo. It's eerie. It's good.
And actually I've been asking around because, you know, there's people that outside of the shop here that you can tell are, you know, they're street folk, and I've been asking them about you know, some of the entrances to getting down there and stuff, and I've been pointed towards the LA River a whole lot, so maybe we'll go check something out around there.
You'll have to send me that picture, Dwarf. I don't think I've seen it yet.
Yeah. I shared it out a while back. I'll definitely send that over.
See, that's another part of all of this. mysterious old world is the tunnel system. That's not just the United States. The whole world has these tunnels. They're connected to all these giant mansions and castles and even the cathedrals, government buildings. How they build the tunnels way back when, a couple hundred years ago? Where'd all the dirt go?
It's because we're living life on the second floor.
Yeah, yeah. So there's underneath also, not just up on top. How did they build all this? Yeah, that's amazing.
So here's a famous scene from Planet of the Apes where they discover the Statue of Liberty covered up. So,
right.
and even in this movie, they talk about the subway tunnels where they discover it, and the apes are trying to change history and keep history from being published on or known to people about what really was there before they were there or became the inhabitants.
Yeah, and I included this photo because obviously this is the original from the late 60s, I think 68 or something, and the apes were not allowed to go over to that side, right? Because the apes in power didn't want the masses to realize, like, oh, we've happened upon this area. There was a prior civilization, and this is like some of the buildings we come across. Like, we couldn't do this, or Sacsayhuaman or Machu Picchu and some of these other places, Ollantaytambo, and you look at it and you're like, whoa, hold on. How did this happen? Right. And so in this movie, and even in the remake, it was like, don't go over there, don't cross the water. They didn't want to see that there was like a space shuttle type of thing. And it's like, let's keep the secret. And, this is almost like literally like you would say in terms of the mud flood, you'd say this is a sand flood. This is evidence of an advanced civilization that predated us, so let's not show the masses. And that's why I love this photo. And it's decades and decades old, that scene of the movie, but to me it's very applicable.
So didn't they call it the forbidden zone or the forbidden area?
I take this as soft disclosure of mud flood and previous civilizations that they're trying to keep from us, like our government say is the equivalent of the apes or the orangutans in the movie, and they're trying to keep the information from getting to us and everything that was buried from the mud flood.
Yeah, and look at the similarities between this picture and then the one of the Sphinx that I sent you. It's kind of the same photo.
Yeah. Actually, you're right.
And it's art imitating life. Or like maybe soft disclosure, like you said, but I mean that's essentially the same picture in the way I view those.
You were talking about tunnels and Dwarf's picture and stuff. We just did a show with Jessica the Cryptid Huntress the other night about star forts, and it was brought up by Jessica, and we talked about it also about tunnels going from every star fort to other star forts, and a big massive tunnel system. Just from that alone, let alone anything else, whether it's in the Grand Canyon, out in California, underneath LA, or whatever tunnel system you're talking about. It's like it's almost like a massive tunnel system across the whole U.S., not just one area or another.
The whole world.
You show that in the Planet of the Apes, the old subway systems and the tunnels, and you go to the other movies of the mole people that lived underground. So it's like, what are they telling us?
Yeah, and you got Elon.
I have
digging tunnels under here. Yeah, no.
Elon's big dig. Yeah.
But how'd they do it a few years ago?
In the Bay Area, Fort Point is right at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge on the west side of the bay, and it's where the Presidio is. And I have a connection there because my dad, before he got transitioned into Hollywood, he was in JAG. He was an attorney in the Army. And so we lived on the Presidio at Fort Point. And it's not a star fort, but it has this weird sort of history where it was built to like defend the bay, but the bay was never even a consideration to be at risk. And it has these very oddly thick walls. And the reason I bring it up now is because it also has these weird like underground catacombs that are blocked off, but seem to suggest that they go underneath the bay. I mean, they head in that direction, but you can't go and look. And so we lived there in the 70s, and then we moved down here to Hollywood when my dad had his career transition. But that Fort Point by, or the Presidio has this very, very like odd history to it.
Yeah, I've heard recently someone did a breakdown of that whole area there, and they were pointing out also bunkers. I don't know if you mean those might be the catacombs you're mentioning, but they were pointing out bunkers and a lot of things from that area you're talking about there. And they say San Francisco seems to be a big, just a big point in this whole topic. A lot going on there, and it's full of those buildings, and it makes you wonder what was and I think San Francisco was named that way back. I think Garrow was pointing out the other night the name. I think what was it before it was like something close to San Francisco. It might have been a little bit off.
Yeah, you can find on old maps anywhere from SF to Dis Francisco, just a Fran. There's all, but supposedly, and I haven't found anything to verify this, but I've heard people talk about how maybe San Francisco was like the western capital of Tartaria because they were starting to reach out even further.
That's interesting.
Or was the land together back then before the mud flood?
Very possible.
Well,
they talk about that.
And it's odd too, because the whole San Francisco 49er thing is like in the middle of the 1800s. And, to Jane's point, they were almost like cowboys coming out. There was very rudimentary technology.
They're out there trying to find gold. Why'd they build San Francisco like that if they were just out there finding gold and they just got out there? Right.
It reminds me of that movie, The Book of Eli, with Denzel Washington.
Right.
Because it was like there was almost cowboys and Indians-ish until he gets to San Francisco, and then all of a sudden it's like a different world with these structures and this society, and it's very mindful of this kind of this trajectory.
So this is just kind of like what you're talking about, the Sphinx and the Statue of Liberty and Planet of the Apes. Here's a building that the majority of it was uncovered, and they didn't know that there was that much to it. Just kind of like the heads on Easter Island. They're starting to uncover the whole body now underneath the heads, and we only thought they were just statues of big giant heads. And now we're finding structures like this.
This is sort of what I meant when I said we're living life on the second floor.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's amazing. That is
How
amazing.
deep do we go?
There's so many. There's so many.
Wow.
Garrow, I had a thought. I have a question for you guys. So you mentioned very early on today about the World Fair in Chicago, and I how like there's traveling circuses, or even going back to like the P.T. Barnum days, like there was like they were traveling and bringing the show to people.
Yeah.
But for the show that couldn't be brought to people, the people had to go to it. And so I'm starting to wonder if these World's Fairs at these different cities were these different cities' ways of saying, come look at what we found in our city. Come to St. Louis, look at what we dug up. And Chicago's like, look what we have here. Look at our stuff. And then, and it's like a worldwide thing where everyone's saying, hey, come check this out, because you can't remotely do it like P.T. Barnum or Circus Vargas. But you go, look, check this out. Look what we found here. And then at some point, somebody was like, okay, well, we can't let the cat out of the bag too much. Why don't we do something about this? But it was almost like everyone going, check out LA. Look at this. And you go, yeah, come
Right.
over here, check this out. That's kind of how I'm wondering if that was what was at play there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense than I mean, what were those every year, or how often were those World's Fairs?
I'm not
And
sure how
yeah,
long.
and
Yeah.
logistically also to be able to build everything, and it's
In a
almost like,
year.
yeah, and it also almost reminds me of people have been talking about like the Olympics and how they come into town, build and just kind of take off and leave everything. And it was almost like they made the World's Fairs like that too. Like they would come and
Right.
build all this grandiose stuff, and then once the show was over, it's like, all right, leave everything behind and off to the next
Destroy it.
World's Fair. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
almost all the World's Fairs, if this is another whole rabbit hole, that's another whole show, is they claim they built these out of plaster Paris and, just within a year or so, here's this gorgeous World's Fair in Chicago, but it's just fake, so we're just going to destroy it afterwards. So,
Yeah, it's
we think
amazing
that
to
the
me.
World's Fair is their excuse of showing things off, saying, oh, we built this stuff, and then destroy the evidence.
So we got the big U.S. Celebration coming up.
In
And they're supposed to
Ohio.
have another exposition or a World's Fair. Trump's office administration announced it, and I think it's scheduled to, or slated to be in Iowa. I'm not sure. They're
I
trying to
thought it
pick
was
somewhere in
Ohio.
the central of the U.S.
Well, I thought it was Ohio.
I heard Iowa, so
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe they might change it by the time it gets there. But how fast are they going to build that
It's
for
supposed
the
to be next year.
celebration of America's birthday? And how are they going to use existing buildings, or are they going to do the same thing as a World's Fair? Are they going to build these great big giant structures, or
If it's
we'll have to keep an
Ohio,
eye on that?
if it's Ohio, it's not where all the train accidents and stuff was, and they cleaned out that whole area, is it?
I don't know.
Oh, look into that.
Well, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, where is this supposed to be, and what catastrophe happened within the last couple of years?
Did any of you folks know, either you three or anybody in the chat, what the story is with plumbing? Because there are so many buildings, right, that are old and older, and I don't know when like indoor internal plumbing was done, but were all of these buildings retrofitted with copper piping?
Yeah, bingo.
I mean, I'm not even making a point. It's literally a question. I don't.
Right.
There's so many buildings, but you would think we would all know. It's like, oh, the big retrofit, like this 10-year project where taxes were raised and all of this, had to happen. Same thing with like, you see these photos and these buildings are lit up, and it's
yes,
and it's like,
Right.
well, there weren't light bulb factories back then.
right.
How would these places shouldn't have been wired? Like, how is like the lighting and the plumbing are the two things that I kind of low key boggle my mind. I don't know.
I mean,
Some of the
that's
videos
things that are left over from the Chicago Fair. You got the water tower, the famous water tower that's there that they used during the fair.
Yeah.
And also, we mentioned about materials and time constraints. Well, how did Tesla or put all the lights and the wirings all over to illuminate? Well, like you said, where do you get the bulbs? Who is manufacturing all these bulbs to light up this? I mean, this is acres and acres of buildings, and inside, outside, it was all lit up.
Yeah, and they say Tesla, he helped light up the Chicago's World Fair, right?
Right.
Yes.
He was at that one.
And then some of the videos I've seen that some of these old world buildings don't have bathrooms or even a kitchen. And you're going, what kind of being was living inside of that building that didn't need a bathroom or a kitchen to eat? So yes, like you said, they had to put plumbing and wiring into a lot of these old world buildings.
I don't think I loaded it up, but I found another article in a book that said, and I think it was talking about Tartarians, but it was obviously talking about a previous civilization. It says where the people did not have to eat. So why would that be in a book? Why would that be in a history book or talking about a civilization and it said they did not have to eat?
Supernatural beings?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
that's just
wow.
but I have heard of people like I guess consuming the sun rays as substance for themselves and stuff like that. I don't know how long you would last like that, but yeah, kind of makes me think also back to that picture of the archway with the light coming through that being there.
Mhm.
That being
Right.
kind of look at angelic to me in a way also.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and I will touch on a little bit on the she was asking about who may have built some of the underground infrastructures we were talking about. And lately I got some interesting information from interesting source, and they were talking about these small people, and
Mm.
they had brought up Chicago, and I think the plumbing situation was brought up as well, and that they had raised the city of Chicago 14 to 16 feet or something, and there was some flooding going on there, all this weird stuff, but they were mentioning these small people that had something to do with possibly building some of these underground tunnels and all this stuff. And last night we were touching on little people on a stream I was doing late night, and the Menuhenes of Hawaii came up, and it talked about how they were great stonesmen and builders, and they would build stuff overnight. And they talked about canals and
Wow.
roadways and stuff like that. And so it just kind of sparked something there.
It's interesting.
Well, there's also a theory out there, and I mentioned it to Jane the other day, and we don't know how to wrap our heads around it. But if you go into biblical aspect where you have fallen angels that come and rule on earth, could these fallen angels or Nephilim built some of these structures? Could they be angelic because they were angels and maybe still had the angelic powers to build these magnificent tunnels and buildings that we're finding or thinking we're finding from old world? Could have been from that time period.
And then I was going the opposite of the cathedrals are perfectly geometrically shaped and made. Why would the dark side want to create something so healing? It still looks like the opposite side is destroying the evidence of the
Right.
healing and stealing the bells. No more bells to scare off the evil and to heal our body. So that's when he brought it up. I kind of went, nah, I don't know, because
All
I'm
I
looking at
can
cathedrals.
say to that, Jane, is look at all the evil in this world, all the people that hide and manipulate, whether it's from the drug trade or
Yeah.
people trade, or whether it's people that have control of the financial situation. Look at the houses and mansions and everything they live in.
All right.
They want to live luxurious above everybody else. I would think that even the fallen angels would still want the
Healing.
like they had in heaven,
Yeah.
on earth.
I have a thought I'd like to share. And
Yeah,
so,
man.
and I haven't thought this through. It just occurred to me. But I read a book, Joe McMoneagle's book. And if you know his story, The Remote Viewer, it was said to have remotely viewed Mars a million years ago. And he saw 8 to 10 foot humanoids, like humans, but 8 to 12 foot, excuse me. And so when you think about Mars, and the more we're learning, the more people are starting to talk about something catastrophic happening on that planet. If people from Mars had the technology to get off of Mars and come here, then they could also, that would account for their size and the technology of the building in Tartaria.
Yes, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. And
So-
going back to the angelic theory of them possibly having something to do with the construction of some of the buildings and stuff here is if you look up, because there's one theory, look up fallen angels. I believe I looked that up just the other night, and it was saying something about them being also like a master craftsman and stuff, and that they shared some of their technology and skills with the humans.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can
And I
see
keep
that.
saying some of the details of these buildings, I mean, especially the cement ones, they're all carved out and all the little beautiful little details. The other night I was asking the chat, please explain to me how a human made this. It's just almost not possible, especially a couple hundred years ago. It's almost like angelic made, like we were saying.
Yeah,
So
it's a mind blowing.
to add to that, and I don't know if it's true or not, it just came to me just like John's thing came to him. So if you look at the cathedrals and all the rain diverters on top, whether they're gargoyles or whatever, Jane, we talked about the other day about the church used to have like devilish kind of grotesque things on the outside. They took them down. So wouldn't fallen angels put those as their things? How many buildings and hieroglyphs have you seen where they've had weird animals or demonic looking creatures on them? And many of the cathedrals and big world buildings have some weird looking carvings on them.
Oh yeah. I want to jump in right quick because what comes to mind also, and I've heard is there different eras, because you'll see different styles of buildings also. There's and people will, I guess, kind of name them on their own. There's the Romanesque revival, Gothic revival, the Art Deco, and there's even I've seen recently a Mayan revival style. So they were showing a building, a beautiful, it was like I think Art Deco style building, but it had all these Mayan depictions on it, and they're like, well, who in this time was thinking of putting Mayan depictions on these type? It just doesn't really make sense, but makes you wonder, maybe the Mayans were doing stuff like that in their time, and just we didn't know about it.
Right.
And there's a consistency too with what we were saying about the Native Americans here saying that these mounds are not ours. They were here when we got here. And it's similar with the Olmec culture, right? And where there's no true explanation. There's a lot of, we found this was here when we got here type of, it's just more honest. People were just saying it then, versus now we're just seem to be covering it up and we're putting our names on it and pretending it's ours.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Founded.
So here's another picture, and this is from our neck of the woods. So this is one of the pictures that seemed to travel the internet a lot about Shelbyville, Illinois, where the town supposedly was founded in 1827, but yet there's a lot of city remains 4 to 5 meters in the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, you got doors and windows and arches, and I mean, so obviously that was made to be accessed from the outside, or that's what it looks like to me, but it got covered up by the foundation or the level that we live on now.
And they say it's just a basement area. What are you talking about?
That's what we call a mud flutter.
Yeah. Well, we just put giant windows in the basements for no reason.
I don't know. It's just so weird, all these things that we find.
I wish we could do like a grassroots LiDAR GoFundMe and just, like get all the like-minded people around the world chip in some money, and then we go and do our own LiDAR and uncover what's actually, beneath our feet all over the world.
Hey.
That's proof right there. They did not build the railroad. They did not build trains that are beautiful luxury trains back in the early 1800s. They were digging them out. They were already here.
Oh yeah, and
There's
I
no way
question,
we built all those tracks. Nope.
yeah, and there's a lot of tracks in different places up in the Mount Shasta area. Anyone going through the town of Dunsmuir, check it out. I hear there's actually, I think you could rent actually old train carts to like a Airbnb type thing.
Wow.
But there's a lot of old railroad stuff up that way. And then John, I was gonna ask you, what's the name of that? I forgot. It's that whole train system that they had going up into the mountains right above you.
Yeah.
Mount Low, is it, or is it Mount Low or something like that? But they had I believe hotel up there, which I got to go back and look and see when it was supposedly built, but I believe it was also burnt in a fire. And this
Yeah,
whole
or
train system that went up into the Angeles National Forest right above where Latchkey's at. And
Yep.
we've done hikes up there, and you can find old train parts still way up in the mountain. And yeah, it makes me wonder.
There's all kind of remnants of stuff up there. Yeah.
Well, I think I'll bring up one more subject before we end the show. We're on an hour and a half, or we can go a little bit longer if you'd like. But have you guys been hearing about moonlight towers from Tartaria or the old world?
Nope.
Does that go to the technological aspect
Yeah,
of
this
it
is
or
like
no?
this is like the free energy towers, and they were
streetlights.
Yeah.
street lights that were way
Yeah.
above the city. I mean, they build them huge, way above the cities, and it just gave you sunlight basically during the nighttime.
Wow.
Yeah, I am aware of that. It's and it
And
makes
they're
me think of something that's up Dwarf's alley, which is the airships and how they were powered.
Yes, airships. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one. A lot of the what do they call them? The steeple or
Dirigible.
there you go.
Mhm.
And that supposedly these like blimps, airships they call them also would pretty much dock onto these things and power up possibly.
Right.
And I don't know, it just makes a whole lot of sense to me. And if you dig into the whole airship more, it's just like, oh wow, they had flying technology. There's talks of them even having almost like a little city up there floating and things, going on up in the skies. It's pretty fascinating when you get into some of this stuff.
So here's an actual picture. Horse and buggy time still again. And we have
Yeah.
this great big tower, and they had this light
Pretty buildings.
and telephone
Yeah.
poles.
Yeah, power lines going
And
through
muddy
there.
I
streets.
know what
Yep, muddy streets.
So PG&E.
crazy, isn't it?
That is so crazy. It's just like the Statue of Liberty picture from Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, Eiffel Tower. I mean, I don't
That's
know.
crazy.
I just can't wrap my head around some of this stuff. Like you have old world and new world mixed together sometimes.
Oh, not just that. What did they call this era? Medieval. Did we really go through a medieval time, or was it a very luxurious Victorian style, free energy, and just that don't look like medieval to me?
And you just touched on it also is that Victorian era.
Yeah.
I really question that whole era and who was really around and just
Mhm.
what it really was. And it's cool to still see some of those remnants. I love Victorian houses and stuff like that. And they have a particular vibe for sure. And they're still around a lot up north. And I think in Pasadena, you get a lot of those Victorian houses as well, right? Yeah.
Yep. And San
No,
Francisco
if
too.
You look at old videos and pictures, everyone was not dressed like they were out there farming their own land. Everyone was dressed like they were very, very, very well off. And the style of clothing was just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that photo. I mean,
Yep.
that is, to me, I see a dirigible docking at an energy source.
There's a lot of pictures of them. Yep, they had airships traveling back during this period before the 1800s.
And if you look up some of the original pictures from when Orville and Wendell Wright did the first airplane flight, you'll see people like not even paying attention, like they don't care. Well, because they've already seen people in the air. They already knew about flight. They didn't care about these two guys in one little airplane because they had these big blimps and all these other things already flying through the air.
Yep, like Colette said, something catastrophic happened not too long ago. People were living in a totally different world just a couple hundred years ago.
But it's weird because if you ask the average person, the first thing they're going to say about these things is the Hindenburg.
Right.
And like
Well,
like that was the only one. Like it was the
did
first
get-
one, and then it blew up and didn't work.
Yep.
And so they scrapped it and went,
Yeah.
what's next?
They did that on purpose to destroy the hidden fact that we had airships all over the place and they were safe and they were fine. So yeah, they did Hindenburg to say, "Oh, we better not do this again."
Hey, yeah. Latchkey, were you checking for fast movers in those pictures?
A little bit. Yeah, I can't help myself.
Speaking of that, in the 1800s, there's newspaper articles about the blimp wars or the silver wars,
Airship
or
races.
silver as far as the color of the blimps, having wars in the air above the U.S. all across the whole nation. There was people and communities reporting that these blimps were fighting each other in the air.
Really?
Those were the good old years, the good
Were
years.
they
Good
there.
years,
Wow.
yeah. Didn't have
Were they
Snoopy on
good?
it then, though. I don't think.
Wonder what they were actually seeing up in the air fighting. That kind of makes
I
sense.
don't know.
of
They said they were
something
silver and they
changing
thought they
here.
were blimp shaped, so they could have been Tic Tac. They could have been cigar shaped. They could have been UFOs, or they could have been
Part of the reset.
blimps or dirigibles, like John was saying. So look that up. That's fascinating story about all these communities across the U.S. in the 1800s seeing all these things that they've never seen before flying across the sky all of a sudden.
Yeah, hopefully our chat,
It's like-
whoever watches this will dig down rabbit holes and come up with their own things that just use your common sense. Don't go, that wasn't what we were taught. Start all over again, do some rabbit holes. Like we were saying, John Levi, there's My Lunch Break. Help me, Brondorf. There's a couple others.
There's
Daydreamer Z is another one. JT Follows
Okay.
JT we had on a couple months ago.
Yeah, I like
Do
to check
your own
out
research.
Lucius Aurelian. I
Yes,
think
that one. Yeah, that
Lucius
one.
Yes.
Aurelian
Mhm.
is another one, and there's Old World Exploration also is another
Yes.
cool one, and they
I
all
got
seem
like
like
10, 15 new ones.
yeah, and I could vibe with those channels there. There's
Yep.
some that are a little more, there's some beefs that break out and stuff, and I try to avoid all that. But yeah, those are some pretty cool ones for people to check
Donut.
out for sure.
Yep. Donut Factory is another really good one. I love my donut. Yep, he's good.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. BBB or 333
Yeah,
or whatever.
MRB 333.
Okay.
There's, just don't believe us. Do your own research and come up with your own conclusion that something's not right here.
That's what I
Yeah.
try to do. That's how I find these articles and pictures. I just keep going down rabbit hole, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, what's that? That's kind of cool. Let's check this out.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to find. You just got to explore and keep your mind open.
Right. Yeah. Just because we recommend a channel don't mean that it's like, oh, that's it, right? It's just something else to bounce off of and
Keep digging.
keep doing your thing and
digging.
seeing
You
that
throw
goes.
some stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anyone's wondering, like, who would do all this? Well, the powers that be that run this whole world. Every single country is connected to all this. The powers that be are controlling us, know about this, and they're the ones that did the evidence and stealing treasures and blah, 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 blah.
So
And what I like about, sorry, really quick, what I like about this is it's I feel like we're, at least for me, we're getting more practice of talking about it. I mean, just not too long ago, I don't think I was fit enough to be even able to talk about this topic, but here we are, going at it, and I think that's a good thing for me and maybe for others. So talk about it more. Ask the questions, do your part, and then maybe we could come together like this and chop it up a little more.
We're all thinking out loud. Yeah, none of us know, but there's so many people waking up to it now. And questioning this. So we need to do this together and just put more pieces to the puzzle and try to figure this out. Yeah, it's crazy.
do you have a last thought, John, that you want to share with everybody before we end?
Well, to Dwarf's point, this is the first time I've ever publicly talked about this topic. Literally. I've never talked to people about this before in any sort of public setting.
They talk, they call you crazy. Yeah.
And I think, though, to his point, like the more we normalize conversations like this, the more they'll be had, and the more people will be comfortable questioning things, because for a long time you kind of feel like you're going to be looked at as the odd one out or the weird one if you
tinfoil hatter.
talk about these things. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you get name called. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so I mean, it goes back to people like you guys and Dwarf, having lives and using your platforms to give voices to people like me who have thoughts and questions and support from people in the chat, and then next thing the dialogue grows, and I think that's really important. So I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you guys, all three of you guys, for what you guys do in this space.
Yeah, salute to all of you. And really quick, John, you I forget what video it was. I think it was a video, or maybe we're talking like this, but you were like talking about being doing things, uncomfortable things, being doing things that, so going live for me is kind of uncomfortable. Talking about topics like, that I'm not fully versed is kind of uncomfortable. So like, and that's what that is. And I remember you saying that, and so that sticks in my head, bro. And so I'm
everybody's been there.
That's where the growth comes. Yeah. That's where the growth comes from. When you kind of step outside your comfort zone and get okay with being uncomfortable a little bit, and you kind of tend to expand. So good to
thank
see you.
Thank you.
Everybody's been there. We've spent a lot of years before we went live in people's chats, doing the exact same things. Man, I like this subject. And then we'd start looking up stuff on our own. It's like, man, I really want to talk about this, and I want to talk to other people about it. So that's why we started our show
2 years ago. Well, yeah, it's almost exactly 2 years ago we started our podcast, because we have experienced weird things here. Well, like our community knows now, and I wanted to share it with people. And we need to open up together.
1,400 people now, subscribers, and I never thought we'd have 20 people. To be honest, I thought it would be family and friends, or somebody close to us that really likes the subject. Now it's like 1.4. I mean, all these channels are growing because everybody's telling their experiences and finding like-minded people to talk about these subjects.
Yeah, it's really
More
good.
People
it's
waking
healthy.
up. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, before we go, I will mention that John Latchkey Hustle, he has a YouTube, and he shows a lot of great footage of the sky and talks about it. And now he's venturing out on new subjects starting today with us. So
all right,
we might see more subject matter coming. So please go over to him on YouTube. And I don't know if you have any other social, John, or just YouTube.
That's it for me. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm on the other social media outlets, but I kind of just stick with YouTube. It's sort of my little happy place. I was posting with Reddit, just posting links to the YouTube, and then Reddit told me a couple weeks ago that I couldn't post anymore.
Man.
It's a bummer too, because a lot of like the views have gone down considerably, but it's like you do what you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm enjoying it, and I appreciate you guys having me on and having this conversation. And Dwarf, it's always nice to spend time with you, my man. I appreciate what you do, and your support is always really, really appreciated.
Well, we need to get you guys back as regulars. Let's keep digging down these together. I think we make a good team of us four right here. Let's keep digging down this rabbit hole and see what we come up with in the next month.
So everybody in chat, or anybody that's going to watch this in the reruns, so please go over to Latchkey Hustle on YouTube and check out his channel and like and share his videos out. And Bigfoot Dwarf, you also are on YouTube and go live and do all kinds of stuff and show them the skies a lot and the area.
Shows.
Oh yeah. Random lives and all that, and hopefully getting out in the field more again here soon. And you can just hopefully Bigfoot Dwarf, that should lead you to the channel, and there's other links there to other platforms. But yeah, thank you again, everyone. One love.
And John, before we leave, I want to tell you that we still have your family in our prayers. And I don't know if the GoFundMe is still going for your parents to get their house restored and from the wildfires. You want to tell us just a little bit about that before we leave?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, thank you guys and Dwarf also for the support. He was posting links and other live chats, and he's just you've been there from day one, my friend, and I really really appreciate it. And Gerald and Jane, likewise with you guys. You guys have been so helpful and supportive. And
Our pleasure.
I want to say too, my mom and stepdad moved into a rental last week, so she jokingly said the good thing is it only took us 10 minutes to move in. It's because they don't have anything.
Oh man.
Which, it's sad, but it's also neat to see that there's a degree of levity there. In terms of the GoFundMe, I want to thank everybody that supported and donated, but I would kindly ask that if you're going to donate, that you find another family to support and donate to, because it served its purpose for my family, and they have they needed a stepping stone, and it's been used. And so I would prefer that if people are going to donate, that they did it for somebody else, as odd as that might sound.
Very good.
Yeah. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
We still have your mom and dad or your stepdad in prayers, and we're still thinking about them all the time, and everybody else that was affected during this time. I mean, there's just tons of people that we don't know personally that have and need things, whether it's clothes or some way of sustaining their life or try to get back to some kind of normalcy. And I think that's what you're talking about with your parents, that they're kind of making that little bridge to almost being able to live a kind of normal, maybe not like they used to, but at least they're in a house, some kind of nice housing where they can start rebuilding their life again.
Like Clay said, a new beginning.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, everybody, this has been fun. Thank you all for coming and your chat. You're just wonderful. We love you. That's why we do this, because we love the community. We love everybody in chat that fires back and has questions just like we do. And don't take our word for it. Go out, look in these history books, look at the old photos, try to find stuff yourself. I mean, if you don't believe what we're saying, and sometimes I don't even believe what I'm saying, but I see it, in the books, I see it in pictures, and I see soft disclosures in films, and it's like,
look in your own town.
Yeah,
look at the old bank buildings. Just look around your own town. You will find these buildings and then question, like, that's supposed to be in cowboy days? Just go down your own rabbit holes. You'll love it.
So I've said all that. Thank you everybody for coming. We love you. Look for us again. When's our next show, Jane? Wednesday night?
Well, you guys don't go anywhere, by the way. You are on tomorrow night with Dennis Carroll, and you're doing maps. You're doing old maps.
Yeah, we're doing old maps, old world again with Dr. Dennis Carroll on Hunting the Shadows. It's the show. The podcast is called The Road Less Traveled. We try to get some weird subjects and things that people don't think about or maybe had heard of but don't remember ever hearing it before. So we're bringing that to you. Then Wednesday night we'll be on the Night Owl Lounge where we hang out and talk about weird stuff and just hang out with chat and give a little back to the people that follow us so they can talk to us more one-on-one. That's why we like hanging out on Wednesday nights.
And Heidi Pop is live right now.
Yeah, so everybody go over to Heidi Pop. Yep. Heidi Pop LA.
Heidi Pop.
Heidi Pop Raid.
That's right. Everybody go over there and say hi to Heidi and give her
Heidi and Lawrence. Yeah, they're talking about healthy kids and healthy food and things like that. And it's just a good show on Sunday night.
So having said that again, people, we love you. Thank you for coming. We will see you next time. Keep looking up.
Keep your vibrations high. Much love.
Love you all.